We see the king coming up. No need necessarily to play f4. Knight c4. Now, here is where I thought the game was going to take a rook and pawn ending turn and a quick draw around about move 30, which is the legal move limit. There needs to be like 30 moves played. So the reason I thought this is bishop might not necessarily have to move, even though it looks a little bit ugly, this position. How does white actually win this rook and pawn ending? Let's go with this. Rook c8, rook b3, and the key move here is rook c6. And this looks like a completely drawn rook and pawn ending. If ever d5, the e5 square is weakened. Example, d5 takes, king e5. This position, it looks like a slot races, which I used to play with my brother on the Atari, slot races type position, where basically it looks as though it's dead drawn. It looks absolutely dead drawn. And for whatever reason, maybe it didn't like the look of the structure just visually, the bishop was maintained with bishop f8, keeping the tension going in the game, which is good for the spectators and commentators. So rook e1 was played. Knight e5 is no big deal, by the way. Even bishop d6 can be played here. For example, taking, no big deal. This position, even if black's temporarily a pawn down, white's pretty unstable and ends up losing the pawn back. Yeah, so knight e5 is no big deal. Rook e1 was played. Rook d8 in advance of knight e5, just to be able to play bishop d6. So it's protecting d7 in advance. Asking white, what have you got? f4 is played. Committal fixes f5. And sometimes there's an opportunity of g4 to play h3 and maybe use the h file. We have g takes. So is Magnus aiming for king f3, for rook g1, for rook g5, this sort of thing? Maybe f5 is still a legitimate target. As far as targets go, it's a light square target away from the bishop. It is possible for the knight to attack all sorts of squares, being on a tricky knight. We have b5, trying to activate potentially black's rook on the a file. A takes, knight e3. Targeting of f5 begins. Knight d5 is addressed here with c6. We've now got, by the way, 3 shared files. This is what I mean. The game literally has exploded into a more exciting territory. From 1 shared file to 3, where this rook can try and come down here, this rook can come around here. It's chaos has broken out. Chaos theory. Okay. We have king f3. So now there's opportunities of rook g1 to g5. Really? This sort of stuff. Okay, we have rook a8. Yes. Rook g1. Now, perhaps bishop h6. This just defends g5. But we have a more exciting turn now with rook a2. Black's really activating his rook here quite dramatically. b3 is played, but just to show some of this stuff, bishop h6 seems sufficient. Actually, I'm not sure entirely what white is doing there. h6 might be a little bit on the dodgy side. Might be. Because of h4 with the idea of h5 and rook g6. But it seems black has an activation plan here available and can potentially swing all across here. For example, b3, c5 to try and disrupt and get across here. This position causes disruption. For example, h5 is not working too well. Example, c takes, check, takes, rook h2. The rook's getting active. And this position is just drawish again because perpetual attacks on h5. Yeah. So it seems as though this is really interesting, rook a2. for the idea of c5, just trying to really activate this rook across that 7th rank. Pigs on the 7th, as they're sometimes called, because they're greedy, these rooks, when they're on the 7th. And it's got a lot of stuff to pick up, but it might need the help of c5 to do it. We have b3 and immediately c5. Yeah, just trying to get a very nasty pin is the first thing. This would be a very nasty pin if d takes. But Magnus bypasses that. No, he doesn't like self-pins, funny enough, usually. On principle, I would imagine. But this is based on the obviously very specific nuances of the position now. Rook g8. Yeah, neither d5 or d takes is sufficient. On d5, h6 to parry rook g5. Rook g8. King f7. This position, white's made a slight improvement, you might think, but rook a3 has a persistent idea of c4, and if knight takes f5, c4, the rook can activate like this, and this position is, it seems black's fine here, should be fine here. Black's succeeded in activating the bishop. Yeah, it should be fine. So basically, yeah, just to cover this pin is just pointless as far as white's concerned. This is just very drawish. So yes, c5. Okay, we have rook g8 though. This is the most promising try. King f7, rook g2. So saying to swap basically the d4 pawn for f5. And the thing is, black can't invite d takes c5 here. There's no longer a pin, if you notice. So if king f6, this is like a mistake. D takes, bishop takes c5. Key difference, no pin. Knight's free to move. And in fact, it can move spectacularly with, can you see, if I give you 5 seconds, what would white play here? Right, knight takes f5, nice tactic. Yeah, this would be very good for white to win. So yeah, interesting with rook g2. So we have this swapsy, c takes d4, knight takes f5. Yeah, I know, black's got a lot of pawn islands. And in fact, sacks a pawn here to wreck white's pawn structure. The thing is, this is really a vulnerable pawn. If bishop c5, king e4, white's much better. So black takes the opportunity to do a pawn sack. And for the first time, white is up in material. A pawn up. Is Magnus going to convert this? Rook a1 with the idea of rook b1. If he can get this b pawn, then obviously this b pawn is also dangerous. This black b pawn becomes dangerous. We have knight d4 protecting and attacking. b4 getting out of that attack. Rook g5, it seems a very flexible move. Rook h5 might be handy. Rook d5 might be handy for this one. There's a lot of pawn islands to attack. Or the third one over here. There's a lot of pawn islands to attack. Flexible move. Rook b1. We have check. Rook b5. Check. King infiltration, which looks dangerous. So yeah, very aggressive turn of events. King walking on light squares, as you might expect against the dark square bishop. King is very aggressive, as Steiner says. The king is a fighting piece. Check here. The black king is being harassed with these checks though. Rook d5, offering down d3 for d7. That offer is accepted. Okay, still a pawn up for white. Can Magnus convert this? Check. Rook e2. White seems to have made progress. Is it enough? Bishop g7. Now we have a key move knight c6. It looks very dangerous for knight d8. But here is where there's an interesting asset. It's not just this pawn. It's this one. These two potentially running pawns have to be used very resourcefully. And this move betrays that here. Rook h5 check. After king g4, rook c5, black has resources like h5 check now available. as well as hitting the knight. But look at this, knight d8 check. It looks as though white's closing in here. Knight e6 forking bishop and rook, but now check saves things. It's going to force white into a position where black can check again, getting out of this fork. Here immediately white's threatening, by the way, rook g2 check. So check's important from black. King e4. Now white threatens rook g2 still, again, winning that piece. Bishop f6. Yeah, and it doesn't seem that easy to make progress. If white ever plays f5 check, we get a kind of blockade position, it seems, where it's difficult to make progress. It wasn't played. Even though black's pawns out, it's difficult for white to make progress there. We see instead rook e3. h4, yeah, both of these pawns are trying to run. They're both now on the 5th rank. h3, fixing that pawn. A pawn on the light square away from the bishop. Seems logical. Rook c1. But now, check. Knight d7. Is white making progress? It looks as though people have thought it was going to be a draw now, but now knight b6 coming to c4. Magnus is playing on, as he usually does. Check. Knight c4. Now here it seems as though black might have been able to force matters with this check and with the idea of rook d5, but instead he played bishop g5. It seems rook d5 might be a way of securing a draw. Looks a little bit scary, but let's follow this as an example. Check. Here. Here. Check. And if we go like this, rook d5, rook d8. Yeah, how is white making progress? It's difficult. Black seems to be holding there. So in fact, it seems as though, yeah, rook d5 might be a route to drawing. But bishop g5, bit dodgy, maybe. In retrospect, if he had infinite time, would he play this? I'm not sure. And chess we're up against practical constraints. So bishop g5, we have rook e4. Check. The king coming up now is different to before. Poking on h5, yes, this invasion point. Bishop e7, and now check. It seems to be all over. It seems as though white is making significant progress now. At move 66, check. And now this move, rook e6, looks very strong for knight e5. Winning a piece in some variations, mating nets in some variations. It looks as though it's all over. This is going to be like the first decisive game of the match here. We have rook takes h3, check, and isn't black losing a piece? Wherever way he plays his king, isn't he losing a piece? And wouldn't that be enough? We've got a running pawn here. Even if we lose this pawn, isn't that enough? This is very interesting. Black played king g7. Otherwise, I'm going to put on like a bit here. If he didn't play king g7, a lot of this, by the way, is preparation before, yes. But king g7 is the most tenacious. On king f8, then we have the check. f6 is also good, but the check's a killer. And yeah, simply winning a piece, this position is great for white. It's like +9. So that's just ruled out by elimination, basically, to play that. It's essentially ruled out by elimination. And king e8, of course, we just take here. Well, of course. And f6, it's even clearer. So by elimination, in fact, the only move loses the piece in the most uncomfortable way for white. It's genius, but it's kind of forced as well. The other two just can be ruled out. You might think, why isn't white winning this now? He's winning a piece, right? This position is awkward. Black still has his two dangerous pawns, and f5 is dropping now. But there is a composition type move available in this position at move 71. I wonder if you can guess it or analyze it. Analyze this position. Might be worth it if you want to get into endgames and stuff. The finesses of tactical endgames. This is not a stereotypical type move. This is more of a composition type move. If you want 5 seconds just to pause the video, obviously you can spend as long as you want. Can you see a move which might give an advantage for white here? So 5 seconds starting from now. It wasn't played, okay. Rook e1 wasn't played. Knight a5 was played. Rook e1 just seems to be the move, which kind of gets a winning position in all variations. 1 point the pawn is immune to that check. That's no good. Rook c3. The rook's dropping off again after check. You can see that the check here is a killer. Or f6, take your choice. Check's a killer. Rule out rook c3, rook d3. We can take here, and this is technically winning for white. This position, again, you know, the pawn's immune, so then it's protected. White's technically winning. Rook h2. Take here, check, rook f3, and again it's kind of technically winning for white. So it seems this move rook e1 is, and you might think, well, hold on, it doesn't rook e2 do the same sort of thing, because there's also these checks for the opposition, right, if needed. Let me just verify that for you dynamically. Okay, rook e1's like, rook e2 is also pretty good actually for the same sort of reasons. It's also a big plus. You know, rook e2 might be good as well, actually, to be fair. But apart from that, yeah, these are the two key moves. I think here, also, I mean, it's dangerous as well. Same sort of stuff. Yeah, just keeping the rook on the e file for one more move seems to be good with either rook e1, which is the strongest of the trio, rook e2 or rook e8. Such is the wealth of resources in this position. Okay, but we see knight a5. And it's here now that this allows actually Sergei to be very resourceful with rook h1. So that h pawn is dangerous. And now white seems to go slightly inaccurate. He should have perhaps played rook f7 check here, and still might be online for winning the position. For example, like this, might be possible here to eventually win. But after this rook h1, we see rook b7. And things are very, very tricky. Now, rook a1 gaining a tempo is a brilliant move under time pressure. So gaining a tempo, and the h pawn is running a bit. Check. Position is technically drawing now. Let me just show you knight c4. h3 as an example. Check. Here, rook h1. And if we get this sort of position, something remarkable happens here. White's kind of in a contortion over there with the knight, if you notice, and the king. Meanwhile, the king over here wins this pawn. Now that looks fine, and the rook can't be used because b3 will be exposed. But the thing is, if we use the king here, believe it or not, can you see what black can do to draw here? This is very interesting from an endgame perspective. If I give you 5 seconds, what does black play? Okay, rook d3. It seems to force a draw because the king's too far away. We just take here and this pawn is enough to draw. That's clear enough now. The pawn's drawing. Just about. Well, yeah. So yeah, it seems as though, you know, knight c4 doesn't help. So rook b5 check. But now black simply has a dangerous pawn here. A very dangerous pawn. White takes on b4. Yeah, you can't. That wouldn't be a good move. It's checkmate. So he takes on b4, king g3. And the knight's hanging here now. And the pawn's coming down. It's got a gravitational pull here, the pawn. So check here. So it's not losing the pawn. Black is not losing the pawn check. But the knight's hanging. Knight c4. But now h3. Rook h4. King g3 trying to herd the pawn. The knight's too far away now. White's got nothing better than rook g4 check. If you play something like this, that's asking to lose with rook a5 check, because then the rook is hanging. So yeah, rook g4 check, king f2, and draw. So I thought this game would be over within 2 hours. Then we had the 3rd hour, the 4th hour, the 5th hour, and I was gripped. I know it's crazy. This is the crazy thing of chess. You'd think with simplification, it's not. It's the nature of the simplification. It's the imbalances that are created, which make even simplified positions interesting. It's the imbalances. I think my new definition of imbalances is not Silman's. It's imbalances are things which make spectators and commentators happy. And imbalances were in this game, and for me, I was happy with this game. It was an enjoyable experience to watch and commentate on. And I hope you found it the most interesting game of the match as well. It's a tribute also to the strength, a testimony to Sergei Karjakin's resourcefulness and ingenuity in finding these amazing resources, where a lot of grandmasters might have even resigned being a piece down. To envisage some of these possibilities with both these pawns on both sides of the board, and the stretching of White's resources and the drawing mechanisms, the drawing resources, it's amazing stuff. Comments, questions, likes appreciated. Thanks very much.